Everyone, hope you had a fantastic weekend. We are recording here on a Monday. We typically don't do it, but there's a very special reason why we are. I have my guy John from Know Before here, the Chief Learning Officer over there, and we are talking about cybersecurity and emotional intelligence. Ooh, those two don't usually go together, but we're going to make it. We're going to tell you why they should and why it's so important, especially right now. So, John, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you will do it better than I can. So go ahead, my man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. First of all, every time I see your content, we've had a number of discussions now, so I'm honored to be with you. I always feel energized. You get the juices flowing every time we have one of these conversations. So super excited to join you on this live, and hoping we get a lot of good feedback and discussion, because I think we can learn a lot from our colleagues across the industry. So my role is I support the amazing team that's global these days that builds our training content within the Know Before platform. We call them internally Know Before Studios, because we create the training content for security awareness training, compliance plus, and then our security coach. We also create some of that content as well. And so I have the honor to represent them, to serve them as their leader. And it's an outstanding group of individuals that are very passionate about our mission here of protecting people from cybersecurity, helping them stay compliant, no matter what industry they're in. So super excited, as I said, to join you and give some perspective here as well. And I always really enjoy our conversations.
Yeah, likewise, John. I am super excited for this as well. And I know our listeners are going to tune in. And don't forget, guys, we put those comments. We can see the comments. We'll be sure to respond to those. This is a dialogue. John and I aren't just talking to one another. We're talking to you as well. So let's get going. This topic of emotional intelligence and cybersecurity. I mentioned, I joked earlier about how they usually don't go together. The tech space is not known to be emotionally intelligent. So tell me from your perspective, John, like, why do you feel like it's so important for us to really lean in on emotional intelligence in the cyberspace today?
Yeah, so I know we've talked about, Jevon, that before, that attackers are using the emotional aspect to exploit, and so we have
Yes.
to use emotional intelligence to counteract that and counterbalance that. And you're totally right. I think when many of us think about cybersecurity, and many people, when they get into cybersecurity, they often think of themselves as, hey, I'm going to be, doing red team work, which is important work. Don't let me downplay that. I'm going to be doing, working on servers and hardening of systems and implementing technology controls. But we know from statistics, from all these reports, that it's the emotional side of things that often get compromised. It's
Yes.
playing on emotions. It's that sort of thing. And then, we've talked about, in terms of our careers in cybersecurity and seeing professionals that have done a great job, they've been able to balance that emotional intelligence with the technical skills. You still have to have the technical, there's still the technical attacks. But obviously, being able to rally people, being able to coach people, being able to influence the organization is an important skill, and just as important, if not more important, than the skills that we learn that are the technical skills. So, emotional intelligence, every time I reached out to you because every time I hear one of your talks, I'm thinking, this is something our people who use our platform, our admins, our CISOs, our specialists, our folks that are even in HR that help out oftentimes could use this sort of knowledge about emotional intelligence and time to reflect on it. We spend a lot of time on professional development on the technical side of things. I know you have a certification.
Yes.
You got to continue to keep up with that. But sometimes we don't make enough. I know early in my career, I didn't make enough space for the emotional intelligence part of things, and making space to develop those skills and making time to devote to development of those skills can make or break a career in terms of where I go with my career.
Yeah,
And can make or break
absolutely.
results, real results.
Yeah, you said a key word, influence.
Mhm.
And you mentioned how the attackers leverage influence and being able to understand people from the emotional and psychological aspect. And when I was doing my cyber thing, like you mentioned, I was in cyber for a long time. What I noticed was the folks who were actually the best at the job did exactly what you said, John. They didn't just say, "Oh, I need to be great technically." They said, "I need to understand the person, the human," because behind the attack, behind the defenses, it's a human,
Yeah.
right? And we use a lot of tools, but the tools are only as good as we're going to be on that back end or front end. So, tell us a little bit about how, like, you kind of design your trainings and your learning and development programs to ensure that you're not just saying, "Hey, technical work," where
Yeah.
we want to go and delve deeper into the human and the psychological piece of it.
Yeah, so I mean, the platform in general and our content specifically is really geared toward continual positive reinforcement, continual engagement, as opposed to what we'll call punitive sort of things. And what I mean
Mm,
by punitive is, hey, you click this email, that way you have to now take this like 45-minute training, for instance. We don't really encourage that. Of course, there has to be training when you click to simulated phishing email. But what say that training is a game it's a gamified experience that allows
mm.
you to practice in a more interesting and engaging way, and in a less threatening way than something that's punitive, that's saying now you're going to spend 45 minutes doing training, right? And it could be 10 minutes. And by the way, rather than doing the once a year training, that's the long 30, 45-minute training that's old school and most of our customers don't do anymore.
That
What we
everybody just clicks through and lets the
Yeah,
browser run.
exactly. I'm not engaged anyway, right? And so
Right.
how quickly can I get through this thing? And you're going to get a bit of that even with your training that's on an ongoing basis, but you want to at least make an effort. So one series that we recently released is called Chameleon. And Chameleon is a series that's based on the Inside Man we created a while ago. It's more like a Netflix series, but it has social media influencing, and so it's fun and it's interesting and it's engaging, and it's actually surpassed our latest season of the Inside Man, this Chameleon series, because it's really
Mm.
snappy, it's entertaining, it gets the message across, and it's 5 minutes. And so again, there's micro doses of content on an ongoing basis is really more influencing the emotions and behavior, the more interesting, the engaging content. Don't get me wrong, interactives, videos, quizzes at the end, still a really important part of making sure that we gauge and understand where we're at. But mixing in with that a bunch of other short form content as reinforcers, as engagement pieces, can be really, really productive. And so we've created a large library of those, and train over 10 million people per month
Wow.
using those pieces of content. And I've seen that grow from, it was the annual training content to more training content on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people first and foremost, John. So you get a lot of reps in knowing what works and what doesn't. So when it comes to this piece, like, do you have any, like, I know a lot of folks are like, whoa, 10 mil, what did you say, 10 million?
10 million, yes.
10 million people. You have so many folks who've gone through your training and you all have iterated. So
Yes. Oh,
what
yes.
is the science behind that when it comes to an emotional standpoint of, gamification,
Mhm.
micro learning, flow of work type stuff? What's the science behind that, John?
Yeah, so we look at rating data and we look at comment data all the time, and we use applied science to iterate. We also conduct focus groups with customers and end users of customers, and we bring them in a room and we say, "Hey, what did this make you feel? What's your reaction to this?" And one really good example I use for that is we had very early on, I think 2019, we rolled out some training, very proud of it. And we got a lot of comments back that were like, this is a waste of my time. No one's ever going to attack me. I'm not a
Mm,
target. I don't know why I'm taking this. So we could have taken that as like people just don't get it. Right. And we could have kept doing what we do, but we used applied science to go, okay, what's the sentiment there? What are we trying to influence the behavior of? And so what we did was we said people are not getting that they could be a target. Anybody could be a target. And actually, we had some people reach out that said, I wish I paid more attention to your training. And because I actually got attacked personally, or the organization got attacked, and I feel responsible now, we actually reached out to some of those people and said, could you share your story? Because we want to open our training with your story. We want to make it personal. We want to make it people aware that there's a certain shame and stigma with cyber attacks, right?
Right.
There's more happening out there than you're aware of. So there's often this failed, sense that I'm never going to be a target because I didn't know that a couple of my coworkers and friends are my target, because there's a sense of shame, and so they don't come out and say I lost $15,000 personally, or I gave this information away for our company and they had to disclose it. And so we want to break down those stigmas, and we want to make sure that people understand that it's the tip of the iceberg, what they're hearing about, and there's more going on. And so we applied that. And so we apply it with messaging, but oftentimes we also use game mechanics, like I mentioned, and or interactives to engage the learners as well with real examples. So as opposed to, I'm going to learn this phishing and then I'm going to get a multiple choice question at the end of it, I'm going to get a little snippet of information and I'm going to see an example that I can either explore or interact with. And that's how we really learn things, right? Is actually engaging and interacting. So we try to use all the instructional design science to apply that to engaging learners, giving them examples, giving them practice, giving them places that they can interact with this in a sandbox sort of, you and I have talked about sandboxes, right? In a sandbox sort of way for them, so that they gain confidence, they gain the abilities that they need, and they're able to do that in an engaging way.
And I love everything you said there, John, especially the sentiment. Instead of looking at, of course, you all had to have emotional intelligence to say, okay, this isn't a personal attack on us and our product and how we're doing things, but there's lessons learned here.
Yes.
And I feel that that is one of the biggest takeaways for the listeners. Is like, no matter what field you are, whether you're a cyber leader, whatever you're doing, we have to understand, the sentiments and what is taking place. We cannot personalize it if we are to see the lessons.
And let's say it's hard, because
yeah, it is.
that's my baby, right? I spent
You're like,
hours and hours
what?
on this,
That hurts.
and to hear, oh, it's a waste of my time. You never want to hear that, right? And so your bias is to go, they just don't get it, and we're trying, and we're never going to change them, but you can change behavior. And you have to have a higher set of expectations, and you have to look at it as a scientist more than as and I say that, but it's super hard when you're invested and you want to make the best thing that you can make, and you want people to be proud of your work, and we all want to be recognized for that work. But it's an iterative process, as you mentioned. You're never finished. It's continual improvement, and expectations these days with media and the production of media and what people expect. Hey, I want to learn all about this subject, but I want to learn it in 3 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Now I'm an expert, right? In 3 minutes. So you mentioned earlier, you mentioned the word coaching.
Yes.
And I feel like this is a great time to kind of talk about how that can benefit us. We said it's hard to, be a scientist and be curious when we feel like there's an attack on our character and who we are or our ideas. So how can we leverage the power of coaching to become better, not just leaders, but also better scientists?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I look at this as myself too, and I think you have to model it to begin with. Is like in my career, in my person, I'm a C-level executive at a very large company. I'm not a finished product either. I need coaching. I need conversations like this with intelligent people like yourself on an ongoing basis to challenge.
Thank
you, John. to continue to my personal growth. And so treating everyone on your team, and then as a cybersecurity and training professional, everybody in your organization on that continual learning pathway, and considering them not finished products as well. Considering, and by the way, this work is hard, right? Yes. It's not like, the old expectation of we send out a training, they learn from it, solve problem. No, right? So the attacks are evolving. attackers are using AI. We have to be using AI. We have to lean into using AI ethically and responsibly, but we have to start using it, just as one example. And we have to be able to say, hey, we can bring people along with us, and we can do it incrementally. A coach doesn't say to you, hey, I want you to get from A to B, and I want you to do it in 2 weeks in a few sessions. And I think there's a lot from, workout science that we can learn about that. And that experience is, you don't build muscle memory by doing a few workouts in a few weeks or doing one workout a month. It's continual. You have to be regimented about it. You have to be dedicated to it. And so that's the same for us as professionals. We have to be dedicated to it. We have to be regimented, and we have to use positive and a lot of positive reinforcement, some carrots, and occasionally some sticks. I'm not putting down the stick. There's sticks that are needed every once in a while. You have to draw lines,
Absolutely.
and you have to make sure that there's accountability. So it's not all rainbows and butterflies, but there's really good science that says you can reinforce behavior, such as, hey, I'm using the fish alert button, right?
Yes.
Which is a free tool that we have, and looking at the percentage of people and looking at teams that are doing a really good job of reporting, tapping into the existing culture that says, hey, we want to protect each other, want to protect our organization, we want to protect our customers' assets. And so by using this fish alert button, by alerting people, whether it's a simulated or real fish, I'm actually helping protect the organization. That resonates a lot better when people do that. I love it. I get a message back that says, this was a real fish, and we pulled it out of other people's email boxes. I feel like the hero of the day. Like, I'm like, oh,
You are.
like,
You are.
the average person feels like. And so
Yes.
that's much more powerful in terms of providing those coaching feedback, and positioning the negative feedback in a way that's like, hey, here's why we need it. Here's the why behind it. Here's how and you can get there. We believe in you to be able to get there. These are all things that coaching mindset really plays a big role in.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And another key component here is like when you approach things in an emotionally intelligent way, you also know the audience. So you're able to, like you just said, you hit no matter who you're speaking with, no matter who you're talking to or coaching or trying to take in this training, you're able to hit them no matter how their learning modalities, their behavioral patterns and types. And that's really the beauty of what we're talking about here. And I know some folks are like, you know what, this is a great conversation, but how do I apply it? I'm not in cyber, for example. How do I use emotional intelligence to kind of improve my career path and my learning strategies? So give us a couple. Like, where do we start? Say I feel like I'm very low on the EQ scale. How do I build my emotional intelligence, John?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in 360 evaluations, because part of being intelligent, emotionally intelligent, is being self-aware.
Hmm.
And again, all these things we say, it sounds really easy. It's actually super hard
It's the
to
hardest
be
thing you can do, right?
right.
It
Is
really
is
is.
to be objectively aware of where your strengths and weaknesses are. So soliciting feedback. Now, if you can't do the formal 360 thing to look at where your strengths and weaknesses are, there's and pay for that. There's ways to sort of reach out in a scientific way, right? And go like, I'm not looking for you to coddle me. I'm looking for constructive feedback and where my strengths are that I can double down on. And a lot of times you'll get really good constructive feedback. And some of the things you thought were like your weaknesses are actually some of your strengths. And so
Yes.
I've had coached so many people and worked with so many people on my team that are like, I'm very detail oriented. And other people who will say, I struggle with the details. Usually the people who say I struggle with the details are actually very detail oriented. The people who say I'm very detail oriented are concept and big people. But again, it's all perception of
It's that
what
Dunning-Kruger effect, man.
exactly. You
Yeah.
don't know enough, right?
Yeah.
And it's huge. And so being able to evaluate where you're at within your career, and interpersonal relationships, which you and I have discussed, are so important to execution of any of these initiatives, whether it's in cyber or otherwise. We've talked about, I'll take a team that is a very cohesive team against a single high performer any day of the week,
Yes.
because a team can cover for each other, can work together, can really be cohesive and execute at a high level. And so, it's leaning into that. Cyber professionals don't do that. Sometimes on the other end of the spectrum, we give lip service to that, but we don't do the hard work that's required to do that, because it is hard work. And we sort of think of ourselves as people, and we're not spending the time to sharpen that axe, sharpen that tool that is, your emotional intelligence, and starting with knowing thyself, and then again seeking opportunities for growth, and seeking opportunities for positive, and not considering yourself a finished product, but considering yourself a work in progress, that you can continue to provide continuous improvement on.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting, John, is that's how as cyber professionals approach our work. Is
Hmm.
we say, okay, yes, this is cool and all, but where's the weakness? Where's the
Right,
vulnerability?
right.
Where's the point we need to
Yeah.
patch? But it's so hard to do that when it comes to ourselves, intrinsically doing that.
Yes.
And when I coach cyber leaders, that's really what I say. I say, you know how when you're doing application security, for example, you know how you're doing that SDLC, secure software development lifecycle, and they're like, yeah. And you know how when you find a vulnerability, you want to get the patch, right? Yeah. Well, that's how we should approach ourselves, as being curious
Exactly.
enough to say, hey, I'm like you said, I'm not a finished product. There's things I can improve on incrementally. Let me patch it up a little bit so I can just get a little bit better each day. And with that said, John, I'm curious to know what you're seeing in your space right now as AI and uncertainty and vulnerabilities and all these things. How is it impacting the people you're working with currently?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge.
Hmm.
The attackers are the first people to lean into any sort of new technology for their advantage, right? So we have to up our game, and we have to start using AI as well, and we have to be very literate about AI, because they're grabbing this new technology and going, oh, what used to be a phishing email a year ago, 2 years ago, that had a lot of really obvious red flags in it, right? It had spelling, grammatical errors. It was not well formatted. Has come, light years further with AI. So
Yes.
now it's about the more subtle signs. It's about, where does this URL going? What is the urgency? Is this out of the ordinary? I can't look for some of the telltale signs that were before. And again, things like Claude Code, that they're able to stand up really convincing looking websites. So if I can't notice that misspelling, I might think I'm on Amazon.com rather than Artisan.com, or because they've made it look really, really convincing. And then, of course, there's the deep fakes and the cheap
Oh
fakes,
man.
not necessarily the polymorphic attacks, where they're it used to be I'd send out a blast of attacks to a bunch of contacts, find a contact list, get it from the dark web, wherever I got it from, do some open source intelligence, and then blast that out, and it would be the same one, so that when I reported it, it would be basically the same. Well, now they could use AI to create, I'm going to send out 1,000 different, slightly different email messages, right? Subtly different, with maybe even the person's name in it so that it resonates more that wasn't available. Maybe some other subtle differences that make it less that, okay, now the IT team can catch this. And then the cheap fakes like audio messages that can be sent to set this up that says, hey, you and I are public people. They
Hmm.
can download our voice, clone our voice very quickly, send out a message that says, hey, I'm going to be sending an email. It's really important that everybody message, and it sounds like my voice. It has my intonation. Scary, scary stuff. So again, we have to heighten our level of preparedness, and we have to lean into some of these tools to help us identify these sort of attacks. And with the change, I come back to the whole thing. We've got to continually train, because last week, last month, AI technology was different. It has grown. The capabilities have grown. So we have to continue to educate people and stay out ahead of these sort of things and know that what was commonplace 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago is not anymore, and it's evolving. So we have to evolve our practice as well.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that, like how quickly these things are changing. But one thing remains the same. We are, they're playing on the emotions. You
Yes.
mentioned urgency. You
Yes.
mentioned sending out, personalizing. You
Yes.
mentioned making it so it's coming from someone or someone you have
Mhm.
a relationship with. Like all these things are based on emotional intelligence. So we can't state enough, everyone, how important it is for us to just slow down a little bit,
Mhm.
and detect how they are kind of playing on us, and ask ourselves, does this make sense? Is it rational? You might be able to have to reach out to the person like, hey, did you send this thing? Don't feel bad about
Yeah.
doing that, because they are playing on your emotions. And I don't care if you say you're a rational person, you're logical. We are all human beings. We all have emotions. And I spoke to someone a couple of weeks ago who was a cyber leader. He was like, yeah, they got me.
Yeah.
Soon as I joined the company, I got an email. They played on that urgency, and he even said, I felt like it didn't make sense, but I clicked it anyway. And guess what company it was? No, before. he said, he talked about the gamification. He said, but it forced me to slow
Yeah.
down. And now I just reach out to my supervisor, whoever it is, say, hey, did you send this? Just to confirm.
Yeah, and I think again, positioning those simulated phishing tests as it's practice. It's not a gotcha, because I think a lot of people think of them as gotchas,
Yeah.
like, oh, they got me. And look, raise your hand if you've fallen for a simulated phishing attack, right? Like it's exactly. I work at the company, okay,
Yeah.
and so it happens to everyone, and so it's a learning opportunity, and it sharpens the acumen that, okay, I don't like to feel like that. Obviously, I having fallen for one when I first started here too, I was like, oh no, they're gonna fire me. I'm supposed to educate people about this, so like it's devastating. But after you get over that, you go, yeah, that was better than a real phishing attack that could have cost the company money, or could have compromised
Yes.
my accounts, could have compromised my personal accounts, since there's that overlap with my personal. So, but again, as cyber professionals, we should be talking about that more. That's what this is about. It's not about gotcha. It's about practice. It's about improving. It's about continual improvement. All the things we've been talking about.
Yeah, and that's what I hope, because we keep harping on that. We have to understand that this is iterative.
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence, iterative, being able to focus and pay attention. Removing ourselves and not taking things personal. But it's so important for us to do that, especially
Yep.
now with all the advancements. So we're winding down here, John. What would you say would be like some of the top skills that we need to take forward as we prepare for the future of work?
Yeah. Again, the future of work. We have AI to assist us now. It can be
Mhm.
really hard to craft, surveys and outreach. You mentioned before, I know, about our security culture dimension report, and we have a great security culture survey. You don't have to necessarily use that. I do highly recommend it. It's scientifically valid, but you might have surveys that you want to create internally that you want to let people know. That was really tough to do. I don't recommend just going to any generative AI and just typing in one thing and say, "Hey, give me a survey,"
Yeah,
but treat it like a very smart intern, a very
I
articulate
like
intern.
that.
Sometimes too smart for its own good, but you can go back and forth and iterate with and work on and really drive your AI to create some meaningful feedback instruments for you. So whether you're working in cybersecurity, leadership, your own individual professional development, feedback is a gift, and structured feedback is a great gift. And so, how do we really, in the future of work, facilitate that feedback in a meaningful way? And again, we have to lean into using AI to help us do that, because it can be hard. I think people think, "Oh, I'll come up with a survey really quickly, and I'll throw it out there," and then they get that back. People have spent time, and it's not actionable. They actually have
Yeah.
more questions than when they started the survey, right? And so I'm a big believer in those feedback instruments, in survey, comment analysis, whatever you put out there. turn on the comments. They can be brutal. I remember at the beginning, first time I got an executive job, my boss was like, don't read the comments online. I, of course, made that mistake. Um, you
But I'm
have
curious. I want to know why he said that.
exactly, but again, if you look at it from a scientific perspective as opposed to a personal perspective, that can be good dialogue, and so leaning into that, creating more opportunities for feedback. I'm mentioning surveys, but also qualitative. Sit down with people, have discussions, learn about the business, learn about things outside of your wheelhouse, because it will help you grow in your career and holistically.
No, awesome. And the thread there was be curious. Everyone
Yes,
just, be curious about other people, about topics.
yes,
That's what's going to really move us through. Well, John, this has been a phenomenal conversation, but I don't want to conclude just yet. You want to make the announcement, John, of what we have coming up?
yeah. We have a webinar. We'll link to it coming up where we're going to discuss this in more depth. Jevon, we're going to flip the script. So Jevon's my expert, and he's going to be talking about. He has some great resources that we link to at the end of the webinar. So really excited to have you on and continue this conversation about cybersecurity training in general, how we can do more, with our careers and drive more. So super excited to flip the script on you and ask you a few questions as well.
Likewise, John. Always a pleasure speaking with you, man. And this was a fantastic conversation. Looking forward to the webinar. So you all ensure you stay tuned. If you're not following John on LinkedIn already, go ahead and follow him. Great content. He mentioned some of the work they're doing over there. It's like a movie. I swear they
Yes.
do such a fantastic job of creating fun content. But thank you so much for your time, John. I know you're traveling all over the place doing your thing. So we appreciate your time and wisdom, man.
Thank you, John. Always a pleasure.
Awesome. See you soon. See you soon,
Yeah. See you
everyone. And remember to keep ascending.